ANNERBE, a Nazi organization assigned with, among other things, archaeological and anthropological research, found this during an expedition to Afghanistan. This flying object is called Vimana, or Astra, by the Hindus. Moreover, during exploration of the subsoil by the Russians and Chinese in 1927, traces of a very ancient nuclear explosion were detected. Certain sedimentary layers had been atomically vitrified 50,000 years ago. The very same phenomenon can be observed around today's nuclear test sites. At about the same period, Kenneth Arnold, U.S. Air Force pilot and CIA agent, launched the greatest operation in manipulation ever concerning the existence of UFOs. Making people believe they didn't exist was not the right solution and clearly insufficient. Discrediting enemies and frightening the population by systematic misinformation proved far more efficient. UFOs and parahuman belong henceforth to the movies, television, and collective paranoia, and not to the realm of scientists, as it should have been the case. In May 1947, the American Secret Services discovered the existence of an ancient terrestrial UFO secretly recovered by the Russians, which had crashed into the Altai Mountains along their border with Mongolia. Tension between the two blocs immediately rose a serious notch. In February 1949, just after the so-called Roswell incident, an UFO was photographed and filmed in Antarctica. It was the first photo of this type of a cigar-shaped object. Other appearances were then to follow in one another by cyclic waves. This is the last known experiment on psychic and telepathic amplification as well as detection of psytron particles emitted by the yogi towards the Apollo capsule. But these tests were all eclipsed by the systematic appearance of unidentified objects around orbital flights and the discovery of traces of civilization on the moon. NASA had to face an avalanche of data and embarrassing proofs. The only solution was to put everything under the cloak of defense secret. In 1971, the Jason Directive set up a special retouching service whose purpose was to erase all signs of civilizations or ruins on the moon, especially in those photos intended for the general public and the press. In June 1965 has appeared this in a satellite report in the area of Deception Islands, south of Argentina. The Russians tried to sabotage the refloating operation in vain, despite the violence of the confrontation. The flying object was finally brought back to Edwards Air Force Base in California. And 10 years later, the first anti-gravitational drone using magneto-hydrodynamic propulsion, or MHD, made its debut test flight in the desert around Edwards Air Force Base, where a number of prototypes came into being. So, in 1996, a Russian satellite discovered in Antarctica the almost intact wreck of an immense spacecraft, revealed by the melting of the glaciers. The ice samplings indicated a crash date some 24,000 years ago. At the same moment, a volcanic eruption on the Deception Islands, the same islands as before, forced the Russian to request help from the United States, given the urgency and importance of recovery of the vessel. In the end, they suddenly dropped it all and evacuated the zone in panic. The device was finally destroyed by the Russians, extremely upset by the situation, which was no longer working to their advantage. The plot known as the Orion Conspiracy. Our research group is convinced that UFOs constructed by the Americans or the Russians will be used to support an hoax attack on the Earth of extraterrestrial origin. The media taking care of the rest, of course. The reason? Once the threat of international terrorism has dissipated, the war economies of the major powers, with the United States at the head of the pack, will need a new enemy in order to still prosper. War on Earth will be replaced by space war against an enemy from beyond.